pharmacology. Today's session is related to practical pharmacology, and today's speaker are Dr. Chetna Desai and Dr. Juhi Karlan. Today's moderator, Dr. S.P. Dhania. Please go. Dr. Dhania, sir, please introduce the speakers of today.
Okay, sir. Yes, sure, sir. Good afternoon, esteemed faculty members of pharmacology. Warm greetings from All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Raipur. At the outset, I express sincere gratitude to Professor C.M. Kamal sir and Dr. Dinesh Badial sir, very dear friend of mine, for giving me this opportunity to moderate the session on competency-based medical education under the National Online Learning Series 1. Today the topic is practical pharmacology, and we have two learned speakers with us to cover this topic. Dr. Chetna Desai, Madam. She is Professor and Head Department of Pharmacology, BJ Medical College, Ahmedabad. She is MD Pharmacology. She is PhD in Faculty of Medicine and also Famer Fellow. We all know she is an outstanding pharmacologist, and we have seen her immense contribution in Indian Journal of Pharmacology. We all acknowledge her remarkable contribution in the field of medical educational technology. Through her expertise, she has rendered important services in the various organizations and fields: Pharmacovigilance Program of India, Pharmacy Council of India, Institute Ethics Committee, CDSCO, and number of others. She has a lot of publication in national and international journals, and for her remarkable research work, she was awarded N.N. Datta Prize and Dr. S.C. Varma Memorial Prize. I hope that we will be immensely benefited by her deliberation on pharmacology practicals. The second speaker, Dr. Juhi Karlan, Madam. She is Professor and Head Department of Pharmacology, Himalayan Institute of Medical Sciences, Dehradun. She is MD from KGMC, Lucknow. She is also Famer Fellow and completed advanced course in medical education. She has a number of publications to her credit in both national and international journals. She has also shared her expertise in various committees of state level, like State Drug Committee, Standard Treatment Guidelines Committee, Drug Formulation Policies of Uttarakhand, and she has authored 2 chapters in a book on humanity. So she has also a long experience in medical education, and I hope that our both on the changing trends in pharmacology. At the outset, I want to share a few things. Our country is a developing country with limited resources. A lot of resources get wasted in health sector because of unnecessary diagnostic procedures and irrational use of medicines. We require too many investigations, battery of tests to arrive at a diagnosis. The clinical acumen has gone on backseat. And also, there is a gross misuse, overuse, injudicious use of medicine, and that is compromising not only the patient's health, but also putting a financial burden on the patient and on the nation as a whole. In last few decades, in teaching and training in medical education is giving more emphasis on diagnostic aspect of the disease rather than its therapeutic aspects. I think that our curriculum should enable the medical graduate to acquire knowledge and skills sufficient enough to manage the common illnesses prevalent in our country. And that can be achieved by having the proficiency in clinical acumen and by adopting the rational approach in the use of medicines. I hope that this concept of competency-based medical education is also one of the steps in this direction. So I think with these words, it's privilege and honor for me to invite both the speakers to share their views on the practical pharmacology. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody, and hello, Dr. Dhaneria, and thank you so much for all kinds. I hope I'm able to do justice to all the appreciation that you have expressed today. Yes, we have worked together on several platforms. We shared your support with several others. Learning and our concerns regarding the redundancy of pharma. Tune with the modern requirements of Indian medical graduate.
Audio is breaking up.
Sir.
Maybe you can stop your video and then the audio will improve.
You want me? Okay, I'll stop my video.
Clearly audible at my end, sir.
Okay, ma'am, then go ahead.
Okay.
Clearly audible.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah, put the slides on the slideshow. Slideshow.
Yeah. You are able to see the slides?
Yes.
Yes, we are able to slide, but it is not fully coming on the screen.
Okay, I'll do. Yeah. So, me with Dr. Kalra will actually talk about this practical pharmacology as it applies to the new CBME curriculum recommended by the Medical Council of India. And at this juncture, I would just like to make a disclaimer that none of these information or ideas are totally originally mine. It is actually a collection and amalgamation of so much of brainstorming we have been doing with people all over the country, as well as in my state with different colleges in Gujarat, especially in Ahmedabad. And also much of it has been derived from this MD online pharmacology series that has been going on so far. And at this point, I would really like to appreciate the great efforts made by Dr. Badyal and Dr. Kamal in this direction. We as users, Dr. Dinesh and Dr. Kamal, would really helpful these online courses, online lectures. And as we go to the culmination of these lectures, it's a sort of structure is being formed regarding the pharmacology curriculum as it will look, let's say 2 to 3 months down the line when we actually start implementing it. So with these few words, let me just launch into whatever I have to say. And again, as I said, this is not the final statement, or this is not to be taken as, okay, we are going to do practical pharmacology like this. These are suggestions, these are our ideas, but we are of course very much open to other suggestions and also rectifications and corrections if ever required. So we know about what the CBME says, but here what we really need to say is that it is envisaged that the IMG should be the physician of first contact of the community, of course, but it also says that he or she should possess requisite knowledge, skills, attitudes. But you see, we have also added values and responsiveness so that they may function appropriately and effectively. The new curriculum envisages 5 roles, being the clinician, professional, communicator, lifelong learner, leader, and team member. And even including practical pharmacology, we are going to look at these roles as well when we try to develop a new practical pharmacology curriculum. We know what is the old versus new, what are the differences. This we have gone over several times, but just I would like to emphasize a couple of things, that in the new curriculum, it's more of competency based, which means that we are aiming at application of the knowledge, right? And rather than just content. And also we are going to, the goal of the educational encounter is application of knowledge, which makes it very very necessary to see that we modify our practical curriculum in such a manner that we are able to demonstrate that the student has been actually able to apply whatever he has been taught. Now, similarly, it also says that the typical assessment tool in the old curriculum, which was a single subjective measure, now we are going to have multiple objective measures, which we call as evaluation portfolio. And also that these assessment tools would be, rather than proxy, would be authentic. They would mimic the real tasks of profession, which is quite challenging, but at the same time, I promise that it's going to be very interesting for the students, and instead of just imagining things, they're going to actually see things in either in the form of case scenarios or in the form of simulated patients or in the form of role play, etc. So when they are going to see this sort of authentic situations right in front of them during the practicals, they are going to eventually be able to help themselves apply what is being learned. Also, another important change that we must keep in mind while framing our practical curriculum, or rather syllabus, is the timing of assessment. While the earlier majority of the emphasis was on summative, I'm not saying that in the new curriculum there is no emphasis on summative, it is there, but we are also emphasizing more on the formative assessment, meaning that for every practical, we introduce a mechanism wherein we are trying to see whether the student has really learned what he is required to learn, number one. And secondly, what are the ways in which we can see that if he or she has not learned, how we can help them identify the learning needs and correct them suitably. So we were talking about the questionnaire. So before it comes, let's proceed. If you look at the volume 1 of this curriculum, CBME curriculum, and go through to the pharmacology, I think all of you would have done so by now. If not, I think it's high time we do it. They have allocated specific hours for lectures and practicals, so small group teaching, tutorials, and also for self-directed learning, total hours coming to 230. There was a huge concern at that time, saying that how can something be that was taught over 1.5 years be now narrowed down to 230 hours, and there's a lot of hue and cry also. But as we sat down to prepare the curriculum, we realized that a lot of redundancy has been removed, and in fact, if we plan things well and if we stick to whatever has been mentioned in the CBME, this is actually possible. Now here we have seen that they have added, they have recommended 138 hours for small group teaching, for tutorials, and for practicals, which means that practical will be a part of this 138. And we may have some sort of overlaps between these. We don't mean to have very tight compartments, because here when you're talking of competency, what is more important is whether the student has acquired that competency or not. So when we talk of competency, you all know by now that we talk of proficiency levels. Proficiency levels from lower, that is the most basic, is whether the student knows, to whether the student shows how, and performs. And when we talk of practicals, actually it is these three levels, proficiency levels, which come into the picture, meaning whether they are able to identify or demonstrate the steps of any given procedure, whether they are able to interpret and demonstrate a complex procedure requiring thought, knowledge, and behavior, and the most highly proficient is whether they are able to gain mastery for that level of competence, so that they are able to do that particular task independently under supervision, pre-specified number of times. And that is why we have this terminology known as certifications. So when we go to our curriculum, some of these competencies have been mentioned as P, that is, they are required certification. Okay, Dr. Dinesh, you can take over from here.
So it's communication and ethics, 68%.
Yeah.
And 17% is defined number of hours for practicals. And 9%, small percentage, more emphasis on prescription writing, and 6% competency for practical is not fine. So those are some.
Okay.
Clinical pharmacology 67%. Experimental pharmacology 16%. 9% pharmacy exercises. 8% is communication and ethics.
It seems that the comfort level is least communication and ethics exercises. I don't know what is the reason, but because perhaps we have not been taking up these sessions. And regarding the clinical pharmacology, maybe it is the interest that we all have and we see the clinical applicability of these exercises in future. That's why what I assume, but ma'am, please take over. Something we read and we deducted.
Yeah. I totally agree with you, Dr. Chuhi, when you say that. Yes, if you look at their what is new in practical curriculum, they have actually been able to say that yes, we have communications and ethics. But when you look at the comfort level, it's quite low. And which is quite understandable because we haven't been doing these practicals in a very formal manner so far. And I'm actually delighted to see that there are a good number of people who feel comfortable with clinical pharmacology, 67%, because that's going to be the major chunk of a new practical curriculum. And but I'm also a little concerned when I see that not many people really know about the defined number of hours in practical pharmacology. But again, I give it a benefit of doubt because once I sit down to formulate the timetable and the syllabus, then I think this picture will become much more clearer. Okay, so I think this exercise would sort of give an insight into how exactly we would look forward to some of the challenges and where people might think that they need to, strengthen themselves and where they are already comfortable. And so maybe they need to just, work more harder in that. So having said that, let us look at some of these issues again. What I have tried to do here is that I have tried to go through the entire CPME curriculum that is mentioned in volume 1 of our publication by the MCI. And I have not just gone into the practical curriculum that is given later on, but I also went through the various competencies mentioned in theory. That is right from the beginning from PH 1.1. And there, if you see, there are some areas. So, as I was saying that we went meticulously through these competencies mentioned in the CPME curriculum. And if you notice that in certain places, they have mentioned lecture, practical, lecture, practical, lecture, practical. Why we need to understand this is that, of course, all these topics, if you notice later on, are being repeated. That means these competencies are being mentioned again in the practical pharmacology. What we need to understand here is that whenever we align our entire curriculum within the department or even in vertical alignment or horizontal alignment, we need to keep in mind that whenever you plan a practical for any particular topic, it has to be in alignment, or rather it has to be taken with or after the particular lecture has been taken. We normally do it, but this has to be kept in mind, especially for topics where we have broad applications like pharmacovigilance, ADR reporting, management of drug management of drug interactions, management of adverse drug reactions. So the timing of these practicals in your entire syllabus is going to be important. So that is why I made this sort of comparison, number one. Secondly, if you see the smileys, these are the green ones and some red ones, and there are some lighter green ones also. Now, what do these mean? I was just going through our own curriculum that we have been following so far in practicals, and over a period of years, we have developed the curriculum so that it is more inclined or more focused on clinical pharmacology. Most of us have actually done away with the dispensing pharmacology that we were doing earlier. But I have also seen over a period of time that most of our colleges do not have a uniform pattern. Some may be doing something with more passion, some may be doing some exercises with a greater passion, etc. So those that we have marked in green, I suppose, or I expect that these are being currently covered, or rather being taken in the old curriculum also. Which does not mean that we don't have to work on this, because now our approach to these practicals will be a little bit different, because now we are trying to aim at developing the competencies, number one, and secondly we also aim at certification in some of these competencies that have been earmarked by the MCI. So if you see here, enumerate and identify drug formulations and drug delivery systems, most of us have been doing it. Then principles of pharmacovigilance area reporting, I think there is no single college in this country which does not do this. Then define, identify and describe management of ADRs. Now this could be a little bit tricky because we don't really talk about management of ADRs when we take practicals. So that maybe we'll have to work a little bit more on this. Identify and describe the management of drug interactions. This, if you see, I have marked red because we don't really talk much about drug interactions in practicals in our institution. It may not be the same in other colleges, but what we have been doing for UG, we don't really have separate practicals for drug interactions. It will be a part of prescription audit or prescription criticism. Describe nomenclature of drugs, generic branded, that we do. Describe parts of correct, complete and legible generic prescription. Identify errors in prescription, correct appropriately. That I think we all do. So that's why I have, I mean, that's something that we should be more comfortable with rather. Similarly, we have the demonstrate understanding of the use of various dosage form. I think we all do it. Then this is one practical, if you remember, we used to have it in a very elaborate manner in the older curriculum, where we used to actually prepare the ORS powder. That somehow was deleted, and even at that time I was a little bit skeptical that why we should have deleted it, but nonetheless. So again, come back rightfully, and hence I have put it at red because currently I think many of us do not have it. I may be wrong, please correct me if I am so. Similarly, demonstrate the appropriate setting up of an intravenous drip in a simulated environment. We do it, some of us do it. And demonstrate the correct method of calculation of drug dosage in patients, including those used in special situations. I think most of us do it, but I gave it a little bit of lesser intensity because I think special situations we just tell them about it. We don't really ask them to, you calculate for special situations. That is what we have been doing. Again, it is subject to contest. Now, here, if you can see, just to help you read this curriculum, I mean the sheet, for those who haven't done it in depth, and will be required to do it, is that these various, alphabets mean something. S means skills, C means communications, SH means shows how, then this says whether it is core or not. Then this is what is the teaching learning method that you want to suggest, and then how are you going to assess it. Of course, there's going to be a separate session on assessment by Dr. Dinesh, so I will not dwell much into it. And last but not the least, whether you are planning or whether any integration is required with the other subjects. So this is how we read this wonderful document. Also, I would like you to focus on number of procedures that require certification, right? So that we will come to that a little later. So this is how we read this whole this one. And when you see, it does mention that some of these procedures require certification, some of them don't. Now let us take up each one of these one by one. Clinical pharmacy, we have read all of these. Now we have been doing them. So this is what we generally do. We show them the different formulations. We ask them how to read the label. We ask them to how these various formulations are to be administered to the patient. But now, along with this, if you look at the ADCOM module also, and also the communication skills that need to be inculcated in the students, you will realize that how to take the dosage forms, how it is to be administered, what care is to be taken, that is given. That is also given some emphasis. And when we teach this to the student, it's not just about the student telling us, okay, it's a tablet or it's a capsule, but a more in-depth understanding of what is it, where is it used, why is it used, how to use it, what instruction to be given to the patients, and whether they are able to demonstrate these skills when while they are undergoing the formative assessment or not, right? So that is where it changes our approach to the practical curriculum. Similarly, if we talk about writing a rational, correct and legible generic prescription for a given condition and communicating the same to the patient. Now, if you look here, it not only requires a skill station, it also requires skills as well as communication skills, barabar? And also it requires proficiency, and they have also defined the number of procedures that require certification being 5. Right? And if you look at the entire gamut of subjects, topics that deal with prescription writing, there is one more PS 3.2 which says perform and interpret a critical appraisal of a given prescription and perform, these two totally would come to around eight certifications. So you can sort of plan your curriculum in such a manner that, plan your syllabus in such a manner that you are able to conduct at least 8 to 9 classes of prescription writing in which you are going to take care of all of these. So many times we may question ourselves that how can I take 5 certifications? We have to do the prescriptions for all the systems. How can we do that? So that is possible if you sort of club up these two and develop mechanisms to see that how these procedures can be certified. Okay. Similarly, we have critical evaluation of drug promotional literature. Surprisingly, this has been given a little bit of more emphasis where the student has been asked to even develop a proficiency with 3 certifications required. Currently, what we do is we usually allocate about 2 hours for this with a follow-up session later on. They have also recommended that we integrate with general medicine for these, which is quite understandable. And it's good to have clinicians around to tell us that how they look at prescriptions and how they look at the drug promotional literature. So this is one more, and here they recommend maintenance of logbook. And it said that logbooks would be maintained specially for those skills or procedures that require certification. Okay. Now here there can be a little bit of a difference of opinion. Some people have expressed that about three procedures, 3 certifications required, and so many number of hours may be required, maybe a bit too much for this particular competency, but again it's open for discussion. Similarly, to recognize and report an adverse drug reaction is, again, we have been doing it, and this should not be really much of a problem. Then we have one more practical that has been going on for so many years now, and I think most of us are comfortable with it, that is preparing and explain a list of eGRUB for a given case or condition. In fact, what we suggest is we take this up first after telling them what a prescription looks like, tell them how to form a list of P drugs, even take, repeat this experiment, this practical at least 2 times before they know they are able to actually do this practical independently with proficiency, and then go to prescription writing. That will perhaps make things more useful for them and more productive. Here again, they have recommended that we integrate with general medicine. Why? I would say why only general medicine? We can integrate even with microbiology. For example, if we are talking of choosing a P drug for which is an antimicrobial. Okay. Then similarly, determine or demonstrate how to optimize interaction with pharmaceutical representative to get authentic information on drugs. Here again, it's we haven't been actually able to been doing it. DPL is one thing, but interacting with a pharmaceutical representative to get authentic information on drugs is a little bit of a different approach to this whole competency, and so that may need to be worked upon. So if any of the centers have been doing it, it will be a good idea to share it on this platform so that we will know how exactly we can go about it. Similarly, preparing a list of essential medicines for a healthcare facility. Frankly, we have been doing it for postgraduate students. We did actually think about whether we should be doing it for undergraduate. Then later on, we thought, yes, why not? We can have it for, we can ask the students to prepare a list of essential medicines list for, let us say, primary and secondary care level. Tertiary care level, we don't expect IMG to know all the list of EML, but for primary and secondary healthcare, definitely we can do it. And that is a good introduction, I think, into this curriculum. And again, communicate effectively with the patient on the proper use of prescribed medication. So here, if you see, it involves some, it involves domains of communication as well as ADCOM module. And if you see in our ADCOM module, there are some exercises which actually modules which deal with this aspect of communication with the patient, which also involves empathy as well as ethics. So we can build on them. We need not take separate practicals, we need not separate AdCom modules from this. We can try to integrate this so that we are able to, save on the time, at the same time, achieve this desired competency. One good thing that has really happened is the experimental pharmacology has been really modified to a level which is actually required. So our transition from animal experiments to showing them graphs was very half-hearted, and many times we also felt it was a waste of hours. So currently, what has been told to us is that, what has been mentioned in this curriculum is that we need to, students should be able to demonstrate the effects of drugs on blood pressure, vasopressor and vasodepressors with appropriate blockers using computer-aided learning. Now here there is a lot of hue and cry about CAL softwares, them being so expensive, etc., etc. But as I was discussing with Dr. Dinesh Padyal a couple of days back, he clarified that you did not even show the effect of drugs on the animals. What is required is use of computer-aided learning to show what are the effects of drugs on the blood pressure in human beings. So there are several simulations available, several videos available which actually do this, and we could just sort of do a deep Google search and try to find out if such videos are there, or maybe some of the younger generation can actually develop these practicals. Similarly, administration of drugs through various routes in a simulated environment using mannequins. This again is a very welcome change that has occurred. We have been taking, for example, intravenous infusion or how to draw out the drug from the vial. These exercises we have been doing, but when it comes to actual demonstration of the administration of drugs, we are in requirement of mannequins. This again becomes a moot question, because when we talk of students having to demonstrate, it means that every student should have an access to these mannequins. It's not that one student performs and the remaining are watching. Each student needs to practice. And considering the cost of mannequins, either they are cheap but not very good, or they are very expensive but of good quality. So either way, it's a no-win situation for colleges, unless the college is flush with funds. So here again, we were thinking about, in fact, I have one model which we have developed. I'm sorry, I forgot to bring it today, but I'll post it on our group tomorrow or in a couple of days, where we have developed a very simple, model of intravenous and intramuscular injection using just a pair of rubber gloves and some foam and some simple rubber catheters, okay, and with colored fluid, which is quite feasible. Similarly, Dr. Padyal was telling me that there are some, there are some appliances which actually give you, the feel of an intramuscular injection, and the student can practice on that. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that if you're able to get the mannequins, so far so good, nothing like it. But even if we are not able to get it, let us not simply neglect this particular competency, for the simple reason that not every IMG is going to have a nursing person by his side, his or her side, to administer the drug. More often than not, a general practitioner may be required to administer the drugs by themselves. So it is good that this begin to develop these skills right away, and so that the proficiency levels can be increased or made better when they reach the final year and the internship. Now
Madam, sorry to disturb, your time is exceeding.
Okay, I'll rush through. So we have some topics which are talking about communication, where we have communication with the patients with empathy and ethics on all aspects of drug use. Then we have communication regarding storage of medicines, devices, how to motivate the patients with chronic diseases, how to explain to the patient the relationship between cost of treatment and patient compliance, and demonstrate an understanding of the caution in prescribing drugs likely to produce dependence that come in the line of management. So all of these may be taken not as separate practicals, but we could incorporate these competencies into our prescription writing. So when you are teaching them prescriptions, you can incorporate relevant communications as a part of the practical so that we save on the time, number one. And secondly, the student will be easily able to correlate. For example, if you're teaching them, let us say hypertension, prescriptions for hypertension, there if you tell them about the drug adherence, it is really going to help them. Similarly, if you're talking of bronchial asthma, telling them about how to use devices is going to help them. If you're talking about angina, how to store the medicines, nitroglycerin, it's going to help them. So you need to be creative. You need to be able to apply your knowledge to know where to put which particular competency exam. Okay. So similarly, there are other skill stations also, legal and ethical aspects of prescribing the drug, where it is integrated in forensic medicine. But anyway, that doesn't come. But there is one skill station that is noted for ability to educate the patients and public about various aspects of OTC drugs. So if you see here, this is thanks to Dr. Kamal. These are the highlights of our curriculum, where these are the competencies which require certification. That is evaluation of DPL, drug selection, prescription audit, communication, and general prescription writing. So this is a proposed plan for practical pharmacology that we have prepared at our institution. I'm not going into much into details of this. These are all merely repetitions of what we have said earlier. The only difference here is that we have actually defined the number of hours, number of practicals that will be used, and also what we would use for assessment. But again, here this I'm not talking because checklist will be another means of communication. Assessment will be talked by Dr. Padyal. Now we could use videos wherever we don't have other, supposing you don't have the simulations. There are several videos which are there of role play, of demonstration. Okay, so you don't need to always have a patient in front of you. You don't need to have, very expensive mannequins in front of you. You can think of other ways by which you can teach the same thing and, help the students develop that competency. Similarly, there are very good videos on how to set up an intravenous drip. So you can think about how to show it to the student, demonstrate it, and then the student will make a, they can write a reflection, or they can even tell us that which are the steps they think are important, so on and so forth. Similarly, for CAD, as I was mentioning, we may not have expensive this one. We can show them the effect of blood pressure, beta blockers on blood pressure, similarly effect of calcium channels on blood pressure, and several of these videos are available which can be used. All right. And then when we talk about tips to improve communication, what are the specific communication requirements in pharmacology? So how to talk about adherence, how to check for empty blister package on follow-up, how to explain to the patient regarding the airway disease, how to use the nebulizer or MDI, or how to tell them about the adverse effects of medicines and how it affects the compliance to treatment. How do you advise them about lifestyle modifications? These are the areas where you need to emphasize with adequate teaching learning methods so that the student is able to acquire the competencies. Not much to be written about the assessment, but if you see that we have developed also some checklists. For example, this is the one which has been developed by Dr. Kamal for communication skills in prescription. So you first need to define what exactly you need to teach in communication skills, and then according to that you will develop this checklist. Similarly, we have videos which tell about importance of adherence in hypertension. Very nice videos are there. You can just go through the Google and get them. Similarly, how do you explain prescribed medicine to the patient? We have videos on that. We have videos on medicine adherence. Then we have prepared this checklist for dosage form for subcutaneous injections of insulin for self-administration by the patient, or for meter dose inhalers. This could be used for assessment. We also have developed a communication skills checklist for ORS. So you can think about the various, possibilities of developing checklists, of developing different modalities of teaching learning. Creativity is the key here. And last but not the least, never forget to share the various resources which are going to be helpful to the student. For example, the drug interaction checkers, NLEM list, the PVPI website, then we have the WHO International website, and then we have the Drugs and Cosmetic Acts, so on and so forth. And then, of course, we have these ICMR online courses for prescribing skills for interns. Of course, our students will be taking them right now. But we have developed, pharmacology has specifically contributed to prescription writing and ADI reporting in this ICMR online course, which has been launched just yesterday. So with this, I thank, sorry, Dr. Kamal, to have overshot my limits, but I hope it is comprehensive enough. And over to you, Dr. Juhi.
Thank you so much, ma'am. You really made my task easier because you've told us exactly how to get our resources. That's the main problem when we are thinking of practical pharmacology. Again, at the outset, thank you for this opportunity and thank you for leading us so that we can perform these exercises very well. Just wanted to say that we have come quite far, as just now ma'am told us that initially we were basing our experiments on animals, and in the current curriculum we see that there is more emphasis on clinical pharmacology rather than on these experiments which we were performing earlier where the animals were sacrificed. It is perhaps because the student was not able to correlate between all these experiments to that extent with what they saw. When they saw the patients, they were not able to correlate the two together. And it was also not much in sync with the goal of the Indian medical, where we say that the Indian medical graduate should be a doctor of first contact. First contact means that when he has completed his MBBS, at least he should be able to see the patient and at least prescribe for some basic medicines, basic disorders. So when we sync our curriculum with the requirements of our community, that curriculum is a wonderful curriculum, and that's what has been the attempt. And so it may seem difficult, you might feel that how will we do it? The hours are less, the time has been reduced, but in the middle of all this difficulty is the seed for opportunity and also for your innovation. The distribution of hours, you had a bit of worry about this. So 138 hours for tutorial and practicals is a very good time for all the practicals. In fact, you might be left with more time. So don't worry, when we were planning, we realized that these are a good number of hours. We will be able to complete all our practicals. And the clinical postings will go on simultaneously. So along with them, there are certain topics which may be, or certain patients which the students may be seeing in clinical hours. You can correlate your case-based discussions which you are taking up in pharmacology while the student is seeing a real patient in the clinical posting. So the two can be synced very well. Then the competencies, there is a beautiful pyramid, the Miller's pyramid, which talks about levels of competencies. And if you look up here, you see that the knowledge base is highest. So we are not talking here about the knowledge base because knowledge will be taken up, the theory part and the reasoning of the theory will be taken up in the theory classes. While for practicals, the number of competencies at show how level and at does level are only these many. So you realize that for knowledge and knows how theory lectures are there, and knowledge base has to be very high if you actually want the student to learn technical skills. And the reason is that if you are only teaching technical skills without a good knowledge base, then you are producing technical staff. You're not producing doctors. If someone is giving an intramuscular injection or subcutaneous injection, and if while giving an intramuscular injection, you are injuring the nerve, then there is no point. So knowledge base has to be there, followed by show how are the competencies, which are 19 in the curriculum. And these pertain to the competencies which the skills that student must acquire, but he need not, you might train him to the level that the student can perform the skill and show it to you. And at the level of P means the student can perform independently. You need not interfere. The student will be confident enough to perform these skills independently. So we are worried about these 4 which will be in the logbook, and we are also worried about these 19 competencies which have to be covered up in the curriculum. And ma'am just now showed you all the competencies which are there. So we are very fortunate that we are today talking about practical pharmacology on this very wonderful occasion when it's World Patient Safety Day, and ICMR has launched its online course to improve prescribing practices among graduates. And the registration for it will become Dr. Dinesh Vadyal sir. He already shared with you the link, and the students can start their pre-test in October and complete their course by December. It is there for interns, and you can find out more about it by going to the link. And why so much of emphasis on prescription? Because prescription writing is falling in this category of P. The student should be able to perform writing, show you how to write prescription, and show it independently. It need not be a supervised prescription writing. So prescription writing, the evaluation of prescription, whether a current prescription is a rational prescription or not. For this, WHO guidelines are available. You can go to the internet and search them. Drug promotional literature. The MR comes and tells the doctor, Doc Saab, this is a new drug and it is the best. There might be no difference between a new drug and an old drug. The new drug may be very expensive. So drug promotional literature and how to analyze it, there's a checklist and there are criteria for it. Please go to the website and find them out. So these are the, you have to, this is again the one which student will have to show you how to do analysis. And P drug, naturally selecting a drug so that out of the whole number of drugs which we have, the student can select a few useful ones. So these 4 are the most, the ones which are at the P level where the students have to perform them independently. The student should be able to create a list of drugs which he thinks is beneficial. Suppose if there are 5 drugs for rheumatoid arthritis, the student must be able to select 1 drug out of it which he will give as a painkiller. Then second drug which he will be giving for immunomodulation. So that out of the whole armamentarium, the student should be able to select a drug. And we have all been doing these exercises pretty well. And the law, so for all these which are at P level, which are just 4 competencies, we are fortunate that we don't have many. All of them have to be documented in the logbook. And how to prepare the logbook, this is the site on MCIL where you can click and you will get the sample of how to prepare a logbook and document these 4 competencies. The logbook somewhat looks like this. It has so many columns. It talks about the competency that you have to address. You have to name the activity. Suppose the activity is prescription writing, the date on which prescription writing was done, whether the student is writing this prescription for the first time, repeating it, or the student was repeatedly doing it wrong. So you told the student where they are going wrong, and this attempt is a remedial attempt. Then you have to also tell them whether they have met your expectations, they were performing below expectations or above expectations. The decision of the faculty, you will decide whether the student has completed the task of prescription writing, whether he has done a particular prescription correctly or not. There are around 25 prescriptions in your curriculum. So have you completed the prescription? Do you need to repeat? The student needs to repeat it, or again, remedial measures have to be given to the student. Now the question arises that how will this remedial action come? This remedial action will come through your feedback. So your feedback is very, very important. Just give them a very specific feedback. Where are they going wrong? They might be making the same mistake over and over again. So tell them where they are making wrong. And once you have given the feedback, the student signs here, which means this becomes a very legal document. It becomes a very good document where you have documented the deficiencies and the student has countersigned. So it has got a lot of huge impact. And as we were discussing with Dr. Dinesh Vadyal yesterday and with Dr. Chetna, they told us that, there are times when people tend to put all the show-how and P-level competencies together, and all other practical exercises also in the same place. So it becomes a practical copy and no significance. You don't know which competency has been done, which hasn't been done. So it is pertinent that for the competencies which are to be taken to P level, for them logbook documentation is mandatory. So keep them separate. For rest of the competencies, you document them separately and keep a record of all of this. So this is how the MCI document looks like. So you can go to the website and check them out. They have also devised a logbook for AdCom modules. So when you are doing communication and ethics exercise, you can document separately. So people who are, the student who will come to us will be coming from first professional. They will already have made an AdCom logbook. So either you continue with it and they carry it for 5 years because there are a very limited hours for AdCom, or you ask them to create a new for the second professional or for your subject. So depends on what is your institutional policy. So AdCom के लिए भी आपको documentation कर सकते हैं. Then there are, in fact, if you're doing so many practicals, the documentation will not only need logbook, you will have to maintain the record so that now they say that internal assessment marks will not go in the summative marks. They will be separately shown in the mark sheet. So when you are showing them separately in the mark sheet, so there is a column of separately of internal assessment. So if you are showing separately internal assessment, that implies that you will have to maintain the record of all your formative assessments that you take, all the exercises that you do, all the tests that you do. Then practical manuals will continue, but we'll have to modify them naturally. And the portfolios will continue. Portfolios will continue in a manner. Portfolio is nothing but it is a document. It is an electronic document where the students can put their logbooks. So they make their account, they put their logbook, and at the same time, they also write their reflections, what they learned, what were their difficulties, how did they improve. So it is a kind of a reflection where the student himself makes a realization, makes a commitment, what went wrong, how can he improve. So portfolios are very common in other countries where every child keeps their portfolio and it is helpful when they apply for other courses. In India, we can make a beginning. We made a beginning, we have tried our hands on this with our, so you can also give it a try. And how to maintain these records. So we have an armamentarium of practical exercises, as ma'am just now mentioned, from prescription writing to rational prescribing. The ones in red that I have made is the one that you have to document in your logbook. So legalities of prescription writing, drug interactions, ADR recognition and reporting, DPL, appraisal of drug promotional literature, P-drug, preparing essential drug list, routes of drug administration, CAL exercises, educating public, ethical and empathy, so storage of drugs, OTCs, drug delivery devices. We have a whole lot of things to do. So that implies that we have now a very clear instruction of what all to be done. It's not that one institute is doing one thing, one medical college is following something else. We all have to follow it because there's a beauty about the competency document that every competency has to be done. You can't say that I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that. If it is that core competency, yes, you have to do it. So all these are there, that the practical exercises, so many of them, all of them you have to do. And so once, because there are so many exercises, so we also have a whole number of teaching learning methods. Simulation of CAL lab exercises. They are, now we will soon be using the second generation CAL lab exercises. Not the one which talk about the effect of drug on animals, but rather on the human counterparts. Simulated patients, I put it in red because simulated patient is something like, suppose if I want to talk about drug compliance and I don't want to talk it to the general public, I just, because for the practice sake, one of the attendant in my department, I tell him that you become a patient of, you enact a patient of tuberculosis who's not taking medicines. And we give him a set of questions to remember that, you know, you will be very resistant kind of a variety and the doctor will keep saying, take drugs, take drugs, take drugs. And the student practices, it comes to you and then we will see the skills of how this child tackles this patient who's non-compliant. So these kind of simulated patients need a lot of practice. They are being used in other countries. It depends if we want to use them or not. It's not at all a compulsion for us. Mannequins, of course, we know that we can use. They are very expensive, from cheap to expensive. And looking at our cost constraints, I think we'll look for cheaper options. DOAP is one of the methods, teaching methods that you can use and very efficiently along with the mannequins. DOAP is demonstration, observation, and then assisting and performing. So DOAP means that you demonstrate a skill. Suppose if I have to teach how to do a subcutaneous injection of insulin. So I demonstrate how to give a subcutaneous injection. Then the student observes me. Then the student assists me. So maybe the student fills up the syringe. I say that, okay, load the syringe and now help me. And then in the next lot performs. The student independently performs giving a subcutaneous injection. So this method is a very simple and effective method. We have always been doing like this, but there is actually a technical name given to it. So nothing new, the same old method that we demonstrate and then student does it, but the name given to it is DOAP. Videos, as ma'am had shown, I will not repeat on them because there are a huge number of videos for all the skills: intramuscular injection, use of inhalers, role plays. For because we see one of your concern was how you were least comfortable with communication and ethics. Role plays will come very well here. When it happens, I just now talked to you about how these children can talk to a simulated patient. At the same time, if you don't have to create simulated patients, you just ask a bunch of students to perform role plays. One on good compliance, one on non-compliance with the drug. Similarly, you can design on different ethical aspects. For example, when it comes to educating the public about awareness of OTC drugs. So you ask one student to stand up and think that your class is the PHC that you are posted at, and start talking to them about OTC drugs, tell them about the basic guidelines. So role plays can play a very good role. Standard checklist when it comes to communication. Kalamazoo checklist for communication has been traditionally used. It is a validated checklist. So when the child is communicating in a role play with a patient, so you can have a checklist of Kalamazoo and see whether the student is following the typical steps which are mentioned there or which are considered to be ideal communication. So communication can be checked that way. Viva Voce, we all know, we all have been doing it. It will continue to be not only a method of assessment, but while teaching, you can ask the students to take Vivas of each other. Ask them to ask questions from each other to find out whether they have learned well on a given topic. Small group discussions naturally will play an extremely important role, especially when it comes to case-based discussions. And problem-based questions, especially when you have to integrate your sessions with the medicine gynecology, because when I was looking up at the document, we can almost integrate with any department. So problem-based question, a common problem which has questions to your department and related to medicine, surgery, gynae. We can have a common problem and discuss it at a common platform. Seminars will continue as they have been for the things that you want them to be discussed in detail. So there are a good number of teaching learning methods and assessment methods. The problem is that with so many teaching methods and so many competencies to be taken care of, the student will get confused if you have not made a blueprint. If you are not sure how will you go around with things, so we need to organize ourselves. For this organization, we can create a blueprint of teaching in our departments. How this blueprint has to be created, as I told you just now, it's important that here you list all the competencies, because the moment you list all the competencies, it means you have not left out teaching any. So you list down all the competencies in an Excel sheet and write down whether this was SH or P level for the practicals. I'm just talking about practicals at the moment. Against it, you write down the teaching learning method. Suppose it is a communication thing, then the teaching learning method is suppose role play. For ethics, or again, the method might be role play. Then does it need documentation? Naturally, the ones at P level will be documented, and even at SH level you can document, but keep them separate. Then semesters. which semester are you going to teach this? Are you going to teach randomly, or when before your first sessional, then between second and third sessional, then second sessional and pre-university? What is it that you're going to teach? It will just help you make your timetable very nicely. Logbook documentation. So you just stick here, logbook documentation required? Yes. Semester with semester. Who's the faculty in charge who's going to teach this? The certification. Certification means that suppose if it prescriptions, all prescriptions need certification. That means and that too 5 times. 25 prescriptions 5 times. So that implies that each prescription the student should have at least independently written it 5 times to qualify that he now for you to certify that he can independently write it very well. So that certification, whether you have done or not, and whether the competency required certification can be filled up here. Number of attempts, how many times the student has done the task, and feedback, whether you gave it or not. You just put a tick or you put a wrong, you have given a feedback or not. So this kind of blueprint will really, really help you teaching. If I'm not exceeding time, I will just like to show you this relevance and criticality practice. Dr. Kamal, I hope I am not exceeding time. Can I continue?
You can go ahead with 3 minutes more.
Okay. So I'll just like to show that this is a typical feasibility and criticality grid. It says that there are certain things in the competencies which will be very feasible to you, and there will be some certain things which will not be too feasible for you. So those things which are very critical to the teaching to the students, I mean, they are of high relevance. For example, prescription writing, then please go ahead and teach them and certify, because they are all in the certifiable category. And at the same time, if you have another category where the feasibility is low, I mean, the feasibility is high, but the criticality is high, but the feasibility is not so high. The situation is that it's an important thing that you have to do, but you require a skill lab for it to happen, but the skill lab is not there with you until now. So what do? So start building capacity. That means if right now you don't have, please search for a center nearby which has a good skill lab. For example, currently in our state of Uttarakhand, a wonderful skill lab is there at AIIMS. We can take help of AIIMS and collaborate with them for our students to be able to use it for certain competencies. So these are certain things that we need to take into consideration, that we have to build capacity for things that we don't have, and they are very critical to be taught and important for certification of the student. So DOAP is a method which can be used for subcutaneous insulin injection. This is just an example where you demonstrate, the student observes and assists and then performs it individually. We all are familiar that there are plastic mannequins, and there are mannequins which people have indigenously designed, wonderful mannequins that people have designed. I know I've seen it in AMU, I've seen it in Boone Medical College, I've seen it in CMC, so I've seen it in Ahmedabad. People have indigenized, I mean, they have really produced their own models. Simulations, so simulations, as we discussed, that computer-based simulations are there or standardized patients. So we are currently in the stage of computer simulations. Elsevier has just now stopped giving its CAL subscriptions, but then now that the second generation CAL simulations will be used, we will be using human experiments rather than animal experiments. So we will be using human parameters, which will be more beneficial to the students. High fidelity mannequin, just a word, because sometimes you may hear it from someone and think, what is a high fidelity mannequin? High fidelity mannequin is a mannequin which creates an environment which is close to real. And it seems as if, and you'll find a lot of videos on this. For example, there's a case of diabetic ketoacidosis, or maybe if there is a case of MI, and you want your children to learn about how to manage this MI, the sequence in which they learn MI. So they have rooms, they have created environments where the mannequin speaks, the mannequin comes with a chest pain, and then you start the procedures on the mannequin, and the entire atmosphere is that of an emergency. So for some of the things that you would like later on to teach them, These environments these are very expensive setups. We are not use. I don't know if we are using them in India, but then we can innovate and we can create these kind of situations here. We in our college have one which we hope that we will use for ethics cases. There is a courtroom which the Department of Forensic Medicine has made. It is a virtual courtroom. So legalities of prescription, we can just ask someone to stand in the witness box and we label him that, see, doctor, you have made these mistakes. How do you correct them? Just to give a feel of how big a mistake it is if you don't write well or if you write an incomplete prescription. So you can use certain virtual settings. Don't need to buy them because they are expensive at the moment. And ADR, I'll just conclude with this because communication seems to be a very important thing to all of you. Just think of an ADR which led to death of a patient. The doctor comes to you. The doctor comes to know about the ADR, but proceeds for his routine round. Doctor कहता है, अच्छा ADR हो गया. The PG comes and tells, he says ADR हो गया, ठीक है, चलो बाकी patient को देखते हैं. The other doctor, he says, अच्छा ठीक है, just put all the notes in the discharge sheet, what all happened. There might be a doctor who will go and visit the ward where the patient has died and ask what happened to your patient. Then there may be a situation where doctor listens to the agony of the patient. And he also starts explaining them about what happened in this entire mishap, what mistakes have, or whatever things went wrong. Listen to the patient. Listening to them is important because it takes away most of their worries and then they are not so angry. Unless they are angry and breaking glasses, please don't go there. And there's a doctor who calls up even to arrange an ambulance. They are in so much of trouble and so much of pain. So he just calls up his resident and tells that give them the number for ambulance. So this is how empathy can vary between how one doctor from another doctor. And it is the attitude which decides your altitude. So let the attitude be right. Teach them empathy. Give them these examples. Show them that, see, which of them would you like to be. So non-technical, this communication skill is a non-technical skill. You can handle it with role play, and there are competencies which cater to these. Kalamazoo checklist can be used when communication is being tested. I'm sorry, there are some. So you can ask them to build a rapport. They open up the discussion, gathers information. So you can find this checklist on the internet. Similarly, case-based discussions, you can show them a video, share a video with them and take it. Similarly, you can also work on skills across phases. You are showing subcutaneous injection of insulin when teaching diabetes. You're also showing them a prescription, then evaluating a wrong prescription for diabetes, and then giving them scenarios of difficult scenarios in the clinical setup because this child is also going for clinical posting. So the child learns how to relate that they are not just eating drugs. They will tomorrow actually be making these mistakes or actually be seeing all this in the wards. So clinical skill acquisition can be developed across phases with increasing difficulties. Pharmacology will be there even in the mini prof and in the final prof. So in the end, the take home message is actually there is no replacement for real experience. So in India, we have a good number of patients. We have real scenarios. We need not go for these high fidelity, expensive mannequins until absolutely needed or until it is an MCI requirement. But if you cannot afford, please don't worry that you have a lot of opportunity in your wards everywhere. The patients are a good number of patients. It's just time to innovate and improvise with whatever facilities you have. Thank you so much, my Dr. Dinesh Vadyal sir, Dr. Chetna Desai ma'am, Dr. S.P. Dhaneria sir, Dr. Kamal. You all have been wonderful helping me out throughout. And all these stalwarts who have designed the curriculum and those who who've been working in this direction for all these years. So thank you, friends. Just be original and be indigenous. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. It was a wonderful session. We all have learned, and I think curriculum is a dynamic process, and we will be changing every now and then according to the change in health priorities and the need. Thank you very much, and it's a wonderful interaction. Thank you, Dr. Kalam, for organizing this very wonderful and very informative academic activity. Thank you, sir. My humble regards to all of you.
Thank you, Dr. Dhanaya. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.